Today is February 6, 2015, and earlier today I talked a little bit more about what happened with the Bechtold situation. And in one of my video clips I said that I was going to then talk about Detective Brian Gross and how he had a conflict of interest when he took my report and knew the Bechtold family. But I think what I'm going to do before I start talking about that is mention the other individual who was involved in stalking me and raping me, although he's probably the only person that I thought maybe had not raped me, because at the time that I met him, I was under the belief that he was like a total stranger to me, didn't know who I was, hadn't been targeting me, and wasn't part of this weird government group, that had been deliberately trying to rape me when I was a little girl, and then hoping to do it again when I was older. So I guess when I think about it now, I know that he is connected to Josh Gatov, actually, and Robin Bechtold, and the government. But the situation was slightly different, and yet I did find out eventually who he was. And it basically just sort of gives, I think it lends credibility to the fact that I'm saying there was an entire group of government officials that were planning to harm me and work together to conspire and premeditate, basically isolating me, tracking me down, and setting me up to get raped. And okay, well, let's see here. I want to have my dog over here. Come over here, Nanette. Over here. Come over here. No, off. Off. Nanette, off. No. Good girl. Good job. And so basically, they were working together, this entire group, and this was a very this is a pretty large group, actually. And as I said, Brian Haines was someone who I was brought over to his house one day. I believe, I'm not sure what his government connection was exactly. I think it had something to do with FBI. But I also know one of his family members had something to do with the military. And then they were friends with the Bechtolds. And the Bechtolds were over there at the time that when I was a little kid, I was getting assaulted and held down, and I was raped outside in front of these kids, in front of the same kids such that were then going to try to rape me themselves when they were older. So I don't remember what the motives were. I know that I had been, for a short time, been in some kind of like talented and gifted kids group, which included him, and it wasn't school related because I wasn't in school. It was like, at the time, it was during the summer, and it was some kind of a summer break when I was over there, and we had to all make architecture models. And Janet Bechtold was taking part in that. She was a gifted kids educator, and she was involved in some way. And so each of us, I mean, I can't remember the entire setting and why it was the way it was, but each of us had like had materials to work with, and then we had to construct a building or like a complex kind of a plan on and anyway, and then everything, and then those projects were evaluated and rated, and mine was actually really good, and I don't know what happened to it because everything that I did got stolen. And I had one of the, from what I remember, you know, I don't want to boast and or think that I thought I was better than I was, but I am pretty sure from what I remember, mine stood out as being really good compared to the other kids and what they did, and which was kind of strange because I hadn't done anything like that before, and you know, I was a girl and there were a bunch of boys in the class or involved in this project, and I think it made some of the parents and some of the boys especially maybe feel a little competitive because I was putting together a really nice model of basically of an architectural thing, of an architectural design. And then somebody encouraged me to talk about the other ones, and I tried to say some nice things about what the other kids had been doing, but I think it was kind of like they viewed it sort of jealously as like my condescending remarks, sort of like, oh, here's the whiz kid, you know, patting us on the back, making us feel like we're little geek children that that are inferior to her nerdiness or something, you know. I mean, I don't know. It was really strange. And anyway, as I say, my entire project was stolen. I never saw it again. And the next thing that somebody gave to me as a project to do was at my house in Moses Lake, Washington. Someone gave me a big box that was one of these build a ship inside of a bottle kinds of things, where you use like a really fine kind of a stick, and you have to put it into the neck of the bottle, and with little tiny bits of glue at a time, and then put this entire huge ship with a mast and the strings and everything, like a big, like huge pirate ship type of a deal, like that, you know, the big old-fashioned ships. Anyway, it was that kind of a project. So that was the next thing that someone gave to me, and I wasn't too interested. They kept trying to get me to do it, and I was like, I don't want to make ships inside of bottles. And for some reason, I disappointed my dad because he was either being pressured to encourage me to do it, or he really did want me to do it and thought that I could do a good job and wanted to show someone something. I really don't know. But it happened after this whole architectural model thing. And Brian Haines actually turned out to be really passive-aggressive. I didn't have any idea. So this was, he was one of the kids that was involved in making these models things. And anyway, I saw him when I was young, and I got raped. They got mad at me. And then all of a sudden, it was like over a decade later, I was living in, well over a decade. I was living in Lake Oswego, Oregon, And actually, I had been invited to live there, to rent a room from this woman who suddenly showed up at my church. And she also turned out to be a government person. Not kidding. She was the child of a different government couple that I had been made to meet that lived in the Bandon area, like on the coast, and in Lake Oswego. Like her dad lived on the coast and her mom was in Lake Oswego. Her mom worked at a juvenile prison facility as some kind of a psychological mentor or whatever person to the juveniles there. And her dad, I don't really know what he did, but he had a house in Bandon and I had to stay at that house with him too. So I didn't realize that Holly, her name was Holly Weiss. Well, she got married to a Weiss, but it was Holly Myers at first. And I didn't realize that this woman who had showed up at my church one day and was kind of following me around and decided to join all the youth groups that I was joining on a volunteer basis. I didn't realize that she was another one of those government individuals that was stalking me. I did notice that she seemed to be sort of stalking me, and I questioned why she was joining a group the same time I was joining, but then I put it out of my mind thinking, well, you know, maybe she just wants to get to know me and thinks what I'm doing sounds like a good idea, and so she decided to join herself. So I was always writing off my instincts and feelings about, you know, why is someone doing this or not. And so, you know, in the course of working at this youth group, she eventually approached me with the idea of, you know, why don't you, we have a room for rent, why don't you come move in to my house? It was her mother's house. And you can rent a room. And I didn't realize this was, okay, Catherine Myers, who was, you know, her mom, and was a woman that I had met at one time inside of this juvenile place. I don't believe I was detained there for any reason, but for some reason I was taken there. And she did some of her psychological kinds of work or programming with a couple of other individuals there when I was there. I was there for like a day or a couple of days. And they were doing some kind of weird things. And so I had actually met her mom when I was a much younger kid in really odd circumstances. And then I had also been I just was dropped off again at, you know, and this was kind of like the government telling my parents what to do types of things. Because, you know, there's no way my parents would just drop me off at strangers' houses. But the other person's house that I got dropped off at was her dad's house on the beach, and he electrocuted me, kept me in a really dark area, and held me hostage there. And anyway, there's more to that. But so here I was oblivious, and I hadn't seen Catherine Myers since I was really little. So I ended up renting this room in Lake Oswego. And then from what I recall, unless from what I recall, this Brian Haines, who's part of the government group too, there was a gas station that was really close to the house, and I got gas there sometimes because it was so close. It was basically, if you cut across the street, it was about the distance of maybe 1 block away from the house that I was renting a room from. So it was extremely close. It was the closest business to my house. And I went there all the time, and then all of a sudden, there was like an Irish group that worked at that gas station. And then all of a sudden, they had a new employee, and I didn't recognize him, but it was Brian Haines. And I just think it's really odd that Brian Haines decided to just randomly take a job at the gas station that I was going to all the time, and that I was known to go to in Lake Oswego. And I will talk more about that in a minute.